Okay, I just
Okay. All right, Boker Tov. All right. Today's daf is Samach Aleph. We're going to start a new parak. We've just finished a very fascinating discussion about how somebody suffering Nazir, suffering Mitzvah, brings all the various korbanot and so on. And now we pick up on top of Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. Shetiglachas Hanega. So the Mishnah says that if you knew that somebody was a Mitzvah and a Nazir, like he was a definite Mitzvah, then you would shave, even though it's a Nazir. That's the chiddush we've learned from the Psukim. You might remember, Rosho Ma Talmud Lomar, that even if he's a Nazir, you go ahead and you do the shaving. But the reason that you had all those crazy things yesterday that we dealt with, all the waiting of 30-day gaps, was because you didn't know for sure that he was a Mitzvah. That's what the Mishnah says. Let's see what the Gemara says. 4 lines from the top on Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. By Rami Bar Chama, Rami Bar Chama asked, Tani Arba Tiglachayot to Kamar, those 4 shavings, right? 2 for Mitzvah and 2 for Nazir Tamei and a regular Nazir. Mishum Mitzvah or Mishum Mavurei Se'ar. So is it because of Se'ar Tum'ah? Or is it because of removing the hair of Tum'ah? Is it a mitzvah or is it just removing the hair? Now, what does that mean? So what presumably it means is it? Well, 1 minute. Well, I'll explain. First of all, just let's frame the question, and then is it like that? There's a particular ritual. There's like a classic brisker chakira. It's wonderful when you sort of see this in the Gemara. Although the brisker has developed a more precise terminology, I'm sorry to say. Anyway, but it's like, is it about process or is it about end result? Okay, is it something that's very much about a particular ritual and has to be done in a very particular way, or is it about just getting the result and having the hair removed, and it doesn't matter how you get there? So, for example, maybe this week's parsha is Lech Lecha Mila. So here's an example. I'm not quite saying the parsha because it's just an example I like to quote. The Tosus Rid asks a question. The Gemara has a possibility that a non-Jew can be a mohel. According to many positions in the Gemara, a non-Jew could be a mohel. So the Tosus Rid says, how is it that the Gemara considers it a serious possibility that a non-Jew could be a mohel, but when it comes to shechita, it takes it for granted that if a non-Jew is a shochet, the animal's an nevela. Now, I don't know why specifically as shita, but it is interesting. I mean, there are 2 cuttings, I guess, that take place. Anyway, but that's his question. Why does it there say it's obvious if a non-Jew does it, it's treifa, and here it's possible a non-Jew can be a moa? And he basically says, look, shita, we know that there are a lot of details and requirements about exactly how the act is done, right? You can't put pressure, you can't have a nick in the knife, there's 5 special laws about how it's done. So it doesn't matter if you get the trachea and the esophagus cut. If you did it with not following some of the, with violating some of those criteria, it's not a good shechita. Mila, he says, and this might shock you, there's nowhere in the Gemara where it describes how you do the process of Mila. I mean, the Gemara does say what has to be achieved. The urla has to be removed. There has to be priya, there's like a thin skin under the urla that has to be pulled back. But it never describes the exact, what instrument you have. If you have to use an instrument, what instrument? Are there any details? Are there any procedures? Just get the thing done. Get it done. So he basically says, that shechita is about the process.
What about l'shem mila?
Well, that comes later, actually, and that's probably connected with the position that a non-Jew can't do it. Okay, but certainly in terms of the physical process or whatever, there's no description. So he says shechita is about the process, and mila is about achieving the end result. And therefore, if it's about the process, so a non-Jew is puzzle, right? But if you could say that doesn't have to be a criteria, but you understand somebody who's not in the parsha or whatever cannot be doing this formal ritualized process. Whereas if it's about the end result, maybe it doesn't matter how it gets accomplished. Okay, so that's a nice little example. I mean, he says that very clearly, and that seems to be what the Gemara, whether we paskin that way by Mila or not, as Rabbi Dov said, there's a discussion about the Kavana.
No, most for shita, it's a problem.
Well, right. Okay, well, that's a psul. That's a little different than a requirement. Anyway, so here it seems to be that's the Gemara's question. Is it about just getting the hair removed or is it about a ritual? Now, the funny thing is that it seems to ask specifically Tiglachas Avure Seir Tum'ah of Tumah. Now, let's just read anyway the Nafkamina. Lamai Nafkamina. What's the Nafkamina? Says the Gemara. La'avure Benosha, to remove it with a salve, with a type of depilatory. Iamartim Shum Mitzvah. if it's a formal ritual of cutting the hair, you can't use a salve. If it's just to get the hair removed, even using a depilatory. Now, the funny thing is you'll remember that the Gemaras before all learned out explicitly that you need a razor, that you need a tar. So Tosa says yes, but the one pasuk or the one sort of limud that wasn't 100% clear was about the shaving of a Nazir Tameh. Okay, it doesn't say there ta'ar. We don't learn out tar there as clearly. Okay, so that's really, and that's why it says tu'ah. It's really a question not about the four shavings. There we learned out it's a tar, and it's about the ritual of shaving. You might remember, by the way, the machloket Beit Hillel Beit Shammai about what do you do about a guy who's bald. And according to one of them, you just pass the razor over without doing it. So clearly there's some ritual here, and it's not just about the end result. But Tosa says the question specifically is the Nazir Tameh, because there the psukim aren't clear, and we didn't have a clear limud. So Tosa also you didn't have to ask it about our mission about the four shavings. As we're going to see, maybe that's why we get the answer based on the mission, as we'll see in a minute. But the real question could just be asked simply, Nazir Tameh, do you need a razor or not? Is it basically about just getting the hair removed? And you can understand that, right? Because maybe there's a sense of V'timei Rosh Nizro. His hair, again, it's so much focused on like when it's violated that somehow the hair has been defiled. So he became Tameh, the hair has been defiled. So you got to get rid of the hair and start again. Right, you got to start fresh. Okay, so maybe it's not a ritual. He's tahor anyway, right? Remember, by the Mitzorah, we have that nice chart here about how the shavings were different. And by the Mitzorah, right, the shaving often came before going to the mikvah, and the shaving could have been seen as part of the process of tahara, and it was more a ritual shaving. The shaving at the end of Nazir is also after the korban, part of the korban, a ritual shaving. But the shaving of a Nazir Tameh, he already became tahor the day before on day, right? He already became tahor, okay? And after he becomes tahor and he starts, this maybe is not part of a ritual of tahara. It's not, maybe all it is about getting rid of the Tameh hair so that he can start growing his tahor hair.
It's like a
yeah, exactly. So that's the question. And it could have been asked stam. It didn't have to be asked in context of this mission.
Well, what do you mean you had a nice chart? If it was a diagram.
So the Gemara says like this. The Gemara says like this. So what's the story? Amar Rav Tashma Migalech Arbati Glachayot. 4 shavings. If it's just about getting rid of the tamei hair, 3 should have been enough. Now, what is that really saying? So Tosa says that the limud is Shema mina mishum mitzvah, Shema mina it's a mitzvah. So what really are we learning out from the Mishnah? So Tosa said, well, we're learning out the fact that it puts them all in the same category. And since 3 of those shavings we know are ritual shavings with a shaver, but it's saying 4. Why did it say 4? It shouldn't really say 3 shavings plus 1 getting rid of the hair. The fact that it's categorizing them all together shows you that fundamentally they're the same. That seems to be what?
Easier to say.
Easier to say, right. So anyway, that's the way Tosos understands what we're learning out. Anyway, there's possibly another way in which the Gemara is making that limud, but we won't worry about that. Anyway, but the Gemara does conclude that all of them are a ritual act and they require a razor, and even the one of the Nazir of Tum'ah, it's not just to get rid of the hair. Okay, that is the end of that parak, and about all that fun stuff about being a Nazir Tameh and a Mitzorah. Okay, and now we shift gears to our very last parak of the Masechet Hakutim, which are the Samaritans. And there's a debate about whether Samaritans are considered to be Jews or not. Did they convert or not? If anybody remembers their Tanakh, at the end of the, at the end of, I think, what was it, Yirmiyahu, right? They are, after the Churban Abayis, there are these, the Babylonian king basically replaces the people with these, the indigenous Jews with, he brings people from Samaria to settle there, the Kutim. Am I misremembering it?
No.
Okay, and they, and basically they start worshiping their old gods, and then lions come out and start attacking them, and then they basically go ask, I forget who it is that they ask, but anyway, I should have done, I don't remember my own Tanakh. Anyway, and basically they're told, hey, this is the, this is the land of Israel, and there's the God of Israel, and you got to worship the God of Israel. So they start sort of like also worshiping the God of Israel. Anyway, by the time of the Bayis Sheni, see, even when the Jews returned from Bavel, you have the Samaritans who are there, and they have some form of Jewish, of Jewish observance. They do some of the mitzvot. They actually have, there's a Samaritan Sefer Torah, and which is has some parallels and some not parallels. Anyway, so the question is, okay, so they're sort of like Jews, and they sort of have a Sefer Torah. They're sort of doing the mitzvos. Are they Jews or not? And becomes the whole question in the Gemara whether they actually converted sincerely at any time, and it's whether Gerei Arayot, are they just Gerim because the lion scared them, so it was never a sincere conversion, or are they Gerei Emet? Did they truly ultimately whatever motivated them at the end of the day it was a sincere conversion? So there's an ongoing debate in the Tanaim whether the Samaritans are Jews or not. You had a question,
right? My understanding is that sometimes Kutim in the Babli is just like means non-Jews because of the censor, right?
Yeah, you are
So
actually correct. And actually, I was actually, I should have checked it because the initial thing that the Gemara actually does here, after giving that whole little Torah about Kutim, the initial thing that the Gemara actually does is it says, how do you know Kutim Elam Nazirs? And it proves how you know non-Jews don't have Nazirut. And it doesn't, I have to say, I didn't do the whole, I didn't do a head, but I don't see that the Gemara has a discussion here about the status of Kutim. So it is possible. What is
also renames the whole parak.
Oh, there you go. So you are correct.
What is he
What is his name?
Hagoyim.
Hagoyim, which makes sense. So after my whole nice little introduction, I don't know why I didn't, why didn't occur to me that here too it's a censoring. Although it is funny, like what's the big deal? Whether you can be a Nazir or not, it's only not like a really derogatory thing to be saying, but yeah, there you go. So that was my that was my total oversight. But you are absolutely correct. Very often, Kuti is a now it's a self-censor often because when the church found out in the Middle Ages about the negative things that when the apostates formed the church about the negative things in the Gemara about non-Jews, and then the church started burning the Talmud or censoring the Talmud, we basically went through a period of self-censorship so that we would clean it up so that they wouldn't be the ones to attack it and censor.
Rashi says that right.
What? Look at that. So okay, guys, my bad. I didn't check the.
What I don't know is whether or not the self-censoring included Rashi or not.
No. Yeah, it is true. Sometimes there are Rashis, whatever. It's a good, sometimes some of the Rishonim exhibit those signs and sometimes not. Yeah. Totally my bad. Okay, it's Hagoyim. It's not a Kutim. Forget my nice little history lesson. What?
It was a good history lesson.
There you go. Okay, good. You'll remember it for next time.
So what we mean by that is that even if they wanted to, for whatever reason, to bring because we can't enforce whether or not.
All right, so let's take a look.
So you're saying when they're using the word Kutim here is just a self.
That's the original text in Hagoyim, and then we sometime in the Middle Ages changed it to say Hakutim. Yeah.
I wonder if the church was into this kind of self-denial or self-flagellation and things of that nature, and then the idea that Elohim Nazirus would have been offensive.
They
that's
were.
interesting.
You mean because they had a whole asceticism and they had their own forms of Nazirut, or basically, that's an interesting.
And they probably
form.
like also rooted in.
That's a nice point. Okay, excellent. Okay, good teamwork, guys. All right, Hagoyim ein lehem Nazirus. All right, so non-Jews don't have Nazirus. Noshim ve'avadim yesh lehem Nazirus. Women and slaves do have Nazirut. Now it's funny because so many examples in Mishnah and Bright have been about women, and I mean even in the pasuk, it's the old joke, right? The guy goes to the yeshiva and everybody's learning Nazir, and he wants him to ask him a really difficult question. He says, "Could a woman be a Nazir?" So everybody's like looking, wait, I think there's a sugya here, whatever. Anyway, and then he says, it's a pasuk, Isho Ishak Hiaflili Nor Neder Nazir. So you don't need anyway. But we've had like a lot of Mishnayos that assume a woman is a Nazir, but normally anyway, they often are a category that's excluded. So here it's being said explicitly. So non-Jews don't have Nazirut, women and slaves do. Chomer benashim b'avadim, there's the following stringency by women that you don't have by slaves. Shehu kofes avdo, a master can force his slave, meaning basically protest against his slave's Nazirut and prevent his slave from being a Nazir, because ultimately he's under the master's control. Ve'eno kofes ishto, but a man cannot force his wife, which is interesting because you would think that the Naziris might be among the Nadarim that a husband can annul because it impacts, does it impact, is it Tarim shebeino leveina. I mean, let's see, getting a
Shalom
haircut. I mean, the drinking wine and the mitame lemesim is not exactly beino leveina. Can you sort of say the haircut is because it affects how you look? I don't know. Anyway, so that's interesting. Okay, it's interesting that a master has the right to protest against the slave.
I mean,
It's interesting that
you
the
think
husband
kofar means-
cannot prevent his wife. What?
I'm sorry. So kofar means protesting against the slave?
Yeah, forced not to accept.
Oh,
which
I would think it'd be the
essentially
opposite. Like kofar means like usually when I force you to do something, kofar to ashur marotza on you,
Right. Well,
So it doesn't mean that he can make his evan to a
no. It's not what it means. You're right. You could have said it means, but it means force against being a Nazir.
That's what I would have thought.
Now, if you look at the Suda Rashi, Rashi once again, like Tosa says, Kofis Avdo Shemocha al Naziruto. Okay, but if you look again at the Suda Rashi, again, he's helpful. I started actually way towards the end of the Masechet, starting reading this Suda Rashi, and actually is sometimes helpful when assessing the Tosos isn't saying.
Good.
So here, anyway, he says, "She'eved shenadar b'nazir yochel rabba l'chafol b'yayin, ishto shenadar b'nazir eini yochel l'kofa, kiven shenadar la v'lo hefer la shuveni yochel lafer." So once he can be mayfair, but once it's binding, he can't force her to violate it. Okay, whereas the slave, somehow he can force him to violate it, which is interesting. Really, he's a Nazir, and you can force your slave to be over the Surim. So all very interesting. So we'll take a look about that when we get to it in the Gemara. Let's look at the Gemara. Today's Gemara focuses on non-Jews not having Nazirut. Ktani hagoyim ein lehem Nazirut. Minani mili, where do you know that non-Jews don't have Nazirut? Ktani Rabbanan, we taught. Rabbi Bnei Israel, speak to Bnei Israel. Below, ovdei kochavim, but not to non-Jews.
The sense I didn't read down.
Well, could have also read v'lo l'goyim. Okay, but also even ovdei kochavim is often a censoring because goyim means non-Jews. Ovdei kochavim means star worshippers. So it was a way of saying, it's not referring to you guys, you Christians. You're not star worshippers. This is just referring to those ancient pagans, right? So even basically, here's the funny thing, and here's why I didn't immediately go to, Sam, to your assumption, because there are 2 degrees of self-censorship, actually 3. What stuff is, the most immediate one is rather than saying goyim, we say akum, right? Because that way, like if you ask a normal guy who's been in yeshiva, like what's this term in the Gemara for a non-Jew, they'll say akum. But actually, the term that all the Rishonim have and all the original Gemaras have is goy. Okay, sometimes it's Nachri, but often it's Goy, and Akum is a way of saying, look, this doesn't refer to you guys, you good Christians among us, right? Because this is referring to those ancient pagans, to those star worshippers. Then when a text gets like more offensive, often it's the censoring, it becomes kuti, because then it clearly is about like some ancient nation, okay? But often when it really gets offensive, rather than having it be about Akum, we actually the censoring is Knani, these ancient Canaanites. Okay, so sometimes when the Gemara speaks about like a non-Jew that is a forceful person and is sort of causing people to do it, like this Gemara, like if a non-Jew comes and demands that a Jew shows him his money and threatens his life and that what are you allowed to do? Anyway, it speaks about like a Knani Anas, a Knani who's a strong man. It's really a goy. Okay, but best example about this is the discussion in the Gemara in Baba Kama about Gezel Akum, where the Gemara talks about whether Gezel, and it's really Gezel Goy is what the Rishonim have, whether that might be permissible, and the Gerson are printed Gemara is Gezel Knani. So it's interesting. So sometimes the self-censorship is akum, sometimes it's kuti. When it's really bad, it's kanani. So anyway, here in the Gemara, you're right. The first censorship is kuti, but then when we get to this line, it says v'lo ovdei kochavim. Tanu Rabbanan, daber b'nei Israel v'lo ovdei kochavim. This applies to b'nei Israel, not to non-Jews. V'amarta aleihem, say to them, l'rabot et havadim. So somehow the v'amarta aleihem, it doesn't just say, I guess, like lay more. The aleihem maybe is more inclusive. So it's a broader b'nei Israel, including the slaves. Okay, so the Gemara says, 1 minute, why do you need to include the slaves before we get back to the non-Jews? Lamali Kra, why do you need a verse to include the slaves? They're obligated in all mitzvahs that a woman is obligated in. Also, Amarava, Shani Hacha, the Amakra, here I might have thought it's different because the Pasuk says, Lesor Isar al Nafsho. So if to put a prohibition, a restriction on oneself. Okay, now that, by the way, is not what it says by Nazir. That's a normal neder. Okay, Ish Kidor neder, Lashem Lesor Isar Nafsho lo Yachel Dvaro. Okay, but be me, but obviously it's true about a Nazir as well, that you bind yourself, you restrict yourself, right? And that maybe is al nafsho, somebody whose person is totally owned by themselves and can be self-directing and determine so technically it's just you own yourself, but also sense of you can control what you do or not. You get to and therefore you can bind yourself. By slave, you don't own yourself, your master owns you, right? So this is a non-Jewish slave. A non-Jewish slave is actually legally considered to be the property. So again, it's not just meant abstractly that your master can order you around, but even legally he owns you, and therefore you certainly might not think that you're in a position to restrict yourself and to accept this neder upon yourself. So I would have thought that. Maybe I would say that also by a Nazir cannot kamash malan that he can. Okay. Now that's interesting because that makes it sound like a normal neder is not binding, right? Only Nazirut is, which is quite fascinating because Nazirut certainly seems to be a more encompassing one, and I mean maybe because it's limited, but it certainly makes it sound like a normal neder he cannot make, and only Naziris he can make. Okay, which is very, very.
But nevertheless, you can abrogate it though.
What?
Even though he can make the Nazir, you can abrogate it.
Yeah, so that's true. So maybe that's partly why it works. Okay, well, that abrogating shows part of this like dynamic. Okay, so let's take a look. So it says like this. Amar Mar, speak to Bnei Israel. Now we're back to the non-Jews. We go Israel. Every time it says Israel, over the Kochavim law, would it exclude non-Jews? Vagabi Erchin by Erchin, by saying somebody's value is on me, and then you have to give according to the fixed sort of a chart in the fixed table in the Torah, fixed list in the Torah. So it says Daber Bnei Israel, speak to Bnei Israel. V'tanya, we've done a brisa. Bnei Israel ma'arichin. Only if Bnei Israel say this value is on me, is it binding? They know if the Kochavim marichin, but if a non-Jew says it, it's not binding. Now the question with all of this is like, what does it mean it's not binding? Like a non-Jew isn't a Nazir, he can't just be a Naziris. What does it mean? Is it part of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach? I mean, will God hold him liable if he doesn't do it? So by marichin, it certainly has a monetary significance. Assuming that they're living in Israel and that they're under the control of like the Jewish authorities, will we force them to pay up their dues to the temple if they took a vow? And here we're saying like, no, if a non-Jew says Erech Ploni Alai, he actually does not become binding and he cannot be forced to pay up his pledge. Okay, so that's interesting. By a Nazir, we'll see what it means. The simple thing that it could mean is you want to keep your Naziris, like be my guest, like but you can't then bring a korban at the end of the Naziris, right? Because even though non-Jews can vow and make korbanot and bring them to the Beit HaMikdash, and we accept them, but like maybe being brought as a korban Nazirut, if we don't recognize that phenomenon of Nazirut, right? So we won't accept it. We will accept an Ola, we'll accept an Adava, Shlomim, but we won't accept, like let's say a non-Jew sort of said, here, I want to bring this sacrifice as a chatas because I did a sin based on my own religion. Or let's say I'm just one of the, I accept B'nai Noach, okay? And I, and I did one of the Shevnis B'nai Noach b'shogeg, and I'm bringing a chatas. That we don't accept. We accept an Ol and a Shlomim, right? So we only accept certain types of sacrifices. So we would not accept something that is a korban of Nizirut if we don't recognize the phenomenon of Nizirut. Like what the other implications are that he's allowed to shaving the Tamil Lameitim like Lamai Nafkamin is a Hava, and here's an interesting Hava Mina, right? Which is like it's always this question within like Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Like, can we imagine that even though there's not a particular mitzvah, if we believe that there's some metaphysical reality to making a vow, it creates some reality. When I say I'm a Nazir, it actually creates a status upon me. Could we imagine that if there was Nazirs for non-Jews, it's not under Shem B'nai Noach, but there's a reality that you can create this metaphysical status, you can change your identity, make this part of your identity, and then maybe you're supposed to abide by it. Even if we don't have like a law, you must keep your vows, or under Shem B'nai Noach, he wouldn't get lashes or something for not doing it. But maybe it's interesting. Like maybe there could have been an idea that there is that type of a metaphysical status of Nizirut that then he should be not like in a way like sort of not legally bound to keep. There's no external like heteronomous law that says he has to keep it, but in terms of just observing, being true to that status, he should be keeping it. So it's interesting to ask like what was the Havamina besides korban that he has Nizirut? What would be the practical implications of that? Yes.
Even the way it's presented in the Torah lends itself to that because it identifies something Ish Kefli Lindor Neder Nazir.
Like it's a
Then it
pre-existing
says,
phenomenon.
How do you fulfill this in Judaism, in the
Right.
Torah? Here are the details.
Right.
No wine, no haircuts.
Right.
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 It could be read as
there's this thing of Nazirut, and right, exactly. So
how you accomplish
right.
it.
So even if I'm a non-Jew, okay, so nobody's going to legally enforce it. It's not one of the Shevins of Spenei Noah. But I want to do the right thing, and maybe there's a phenomenon of Nazirut, and I accept it, and it's meaningful and has a reality, and I should be abiding by it. Okay, so that's anyway. But now we're going to Erechim. So it says.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
How do you explain Nafsho Kanuya? I'm sorry.
Owned. It's an issue of ownership.
No, just ownership.
Yeah,
Straight
non-Jewish property. I mean,
Right.
a slave is property of the master.
Straight out.
Okay. Yochel lo yu ne'erachi. Now, maybe a non-Jew should also not be ne'erach, meaning if I, as a Jew, say, the value of this person alai, and this person is a non-Jew, maybe that's also I don't pay anything. Maybe although this idea that this special category of erchin, that you go by the sort of the list in the Torah, male, female, age, or whatever, that's all Jews doing it relating to Jews. Maybe it shouldn't apply even if the ne'erach, the person you're referring to, is a non-Jew. So, Talmud Lomar, ish, because it also says ish. So, where's the here? Ish ki yafli neder be'erkechan nefashos laHashem, right? So it's Taber b'nei Yisrael v'amart alehem ish ki yafli. Now the funny thing is, ish is also a subject. Is a subject. Ish ki yafli. But nevertheless, we're learning b'nei Yisrael excluded non-Jews fundamentally, so they're not the subjects of this. But the ish is more inclusive, so that includes them as the objects of this. They can be ne'erach, even though they can't be ma'arich. Okay, so you see that. You see that there is a verse that comes to balance out the Bnei Israel, and that does include non-Jews partially. So here too, so here too, even though it says Daber Bnei Israel, the question is that maybe we have. Hold on, Tosos I think quotes a pasuk. It says. Oh, right, because we said Amartalehem, right? Remember we said Amartalehem comes to include the slaves. So maybe Amartalehem should come to include even non-Jews to some degree. Hold on, let me just check Tosos. Oh, no, actually, is there an Ish by Nazir? 1 minute, hold on. Right, of course. Okay, so that's the question, right? Not the V'amartalehem. Okay, so why do we say Bnei Yisrael excludes non-Jews and Amartalehem includes slaves? Let's say Bnei Yisrael fundamentally excludes, but it's Bnei Yisrael V'amartalehem ish o isha, right? Of course, ish o isha. So maybe the ish should come back and include non-Jews to some degree. What that middle position would be is not clear. By erchin, they can't be ma'arich, but they can be ne'erach. So here too, why don't we say the ish o isha come back and include them, that to some degree they're in the parsha of Nazirut. So why don't we say that here? So the Gemara says, no, Shani Hachad Amar Kra, because the verse says, Laviv limo lo yitama, that the first thing it says about Nazir cannot be tamei to father and mother. B'mi chiesh lo av, it's only talking about somebody that has a father. A non-Jew does not legally have a father. What does that mean? I mean, we know the idea that if somebody converts, they're considered to be katan shenolad, and they're not legally related to their biological parents. But what does that mean by saying that by a non-Jew? So the says, Lamai, what do you mean? For what purpose? How could you say that? If it means that maybe they don't inherit from their father, that there's no legal recognition, maybe it's a matriarchy in the non-Jewish world. Who knows? Maybe there's no legal recognition of father. It's not true. Good var Torah, that a non-Jew does inherit from his father. An inheritance days I gave Mount Seir. So there is a recognition of a father and of a father and child so therefore it is legally recognized as a father. So what do you mean it's not legally recognized as the father?
The Gemara here is saying that according to Torah law, non-Jews should inherit from their father, rather than making a sociological sort of observation of how they. Right?
Well, again, it gets to the question of, are we claiming it as Sheva Mitzvah Spanim? No,
right. In other words, it's
no. But what it's saying is, is that we sort of, at least, we can't claim that. Oh, when it talks about father, we don't sort of recognize whether sociologically, or we don't like the Torah. The claim was the Torah would never refer to father because it's completely not recognized among non-Jews. That is something legally meaningful. And the answer is, like, you're right. I mean, it is funny because we're not claiming. It's sort of like the same discussion about Nazir. Like, we don't have to put everything into a category of mandated law and Sheva Mitzvah Noach to say that it's like a meaningful type of a phenomenon. So I think it's saying, but does that mean it's purely sociological? It doesn't have some other anyway. But yeah, it is saying that the Torah recognizes. Right. Look, for the degree to which, this is like no. I'm just trying to articulate this. This is a discussion, for example, that what's his name, the Shara Yosher, Rabbi Shimon Shkup has, like, about how much is everything really just derived from the fact that it's law and legislated, and how much, like he says, for example, if the Torah never said like lo tigzol, would there still be a reality of ownership, and that fundamentally, whether you would actually be punished by a legal system or not would be a different question. But would there still be a reality that something that you produced, whatever you would own, sort of like and that somebody else? It's sort of like a natural law type of a thing, and you wouldn't, right? And he deals with like interesting questions about anyway, like if you like here's like the question he asked. Let's say you were to say that Gezel Goy would be mutter. But would that mean that if you stole the esrog of a non-Jew, you could use it on Sukkot? Like, maybe not. Maybe it was mutter to take it, but it doesn't make it yours. Maybe. So maybe there was like a different reality. So there's some things which are not just because what the law says about them. They are certain reality. I mean, I sometimes use the word metaphysical, but even if you're talking about something like, a concept of ownership or, inheritance, or, it's how's family recognized? How are the parents recognized? Is there some type of a reality to that, regardless of any particular legislation about that? And then legislation could come along and relate to that reality, but to some degree that reality exists prior to being legislated. Here too, you could sort of ask, like, there could be a case where this would intersect. It's not about Sheva Mitzvah. If I want to buy something off of a non-Jew, right, can I assume that he owns it if he inherited it from his father? Right, so it does. There will be times that it will come in intersection with a legal system, and then you have to know what those realities are. So that seems to sort of be what's going on here. Okay. So it says like this. So yeah, there is that concept about recognizing the sense, that legally that somebody's a father, and that there's a sense of inheriting from the father. So how could you say that lavi limo lo yitama couldn't apply to a non-Jew? So the Gemara says, Ella b'ni shemutzar al kibud aviv. So okay. So lavi limo, that would only still apply to somebody who has a mitzvah of kibud av, and that doesn't apply to non-Jews. So that's what we know it's excluded. So the Gemara says, 1 minute. Miksiv kibud avicha, kaved avicha, gabi Nazir. It doesn't say kibud, it just says father. Now, of course, it's very interesting because you could say maybe that's at the root of the idea of being mitame to parents, right? For example, the whole idea that there's a mitzvah to be mitavel on krovim is learned from the fact that there are these 7 krovim that a Kohen is mitame to. Right, the normal Kohen, not a Kohen Gadol, not a Nazir. A normal Kohen is mitame to his father and his mother and his sister and his brother or whatever, and his son and his daughter and his wife. So those are the 7. So anyway, so from the mitzvah to be mitame, we learn the idea of the mitzvah to be mitabel on them. If assuming that avelus is doraita, or to be cover them, about to take care of them when they die and to bury them and so on. So there's a certain parallel that's learned out there. So you could sort of see, yeah, that's all because of the mitzvah of kibud, right? Of course, that doesn't really work because there's not really a mitzvah of kibud by children or by siblings. So it's less about kibud per se than about like a responsibility towards them. But anyway, it is interesting that the Gemara wants to say, if it says laviv l'itamo, maybe it's within a framework of somebody that you have kibud of and not father, but it rejects that. It doesn't say it's about kibud of. And as we said, it's not those idea of being nitma. Here he's not nitma, but that whole concept is not limited to kibud. It applies to siblings and to children.
So you say kvod hamet. So what you're doing is you're suggesting that the most concrete foundation for that more general concept is the kavod of the child for the parent.
Yeah, but again, so that seems to have been the hava.
The hava meaning.
But at the end of the day, there's mitame for other krovim that aren't parents, and it's not exactly. That's not what it's based on. Okay, so Gabi Nazir Ela Makra Lavivili Moloitama. So we're still trying to see how non-Jews are categorically excluded here. Bnei Israel is not enough because it also says each. So the verse says Lavivili Moloitama. B'mishi lo tum'ah. Yatsa Avi Kochavim Shein lo tum'ah. This includes a non-Jew because this cannot become tamei, but a non-Jew doesn't become tamei. Okay, now that is very relevant, right? Again, here's another good example of like a metaphysical reality that will easily intersect with our legal system. Like for them, what difference does it make if it's not part of Shemitz B'nai Noah? But if he became tamei, it's relevant if what happens if I touch him. If he touched a dead body, now I touch him. What's my status, right? So all these statuses that apply to them, whether or not their legal system addresses it or not, are still relevant to determine the realities of those statuses. So it can't be talking about a non-Jew because a non-Jew doesn't become tamei. Shein lo tumah. Minolan, tuma. So how do you know a non-Jew doesn't have tumah? Because the verse says, a person who becomes tamei and does not get sprinkled the ashes of the paraduma, and then go ahead and eats kachim or goes into the base of mikdash, he'll be cut off from his nation. So it's only talking about somebody that has a kahal, okay, and therefore meaning part of Klal Yisrael. Meaning they might have their own communities, but the frame of the word kahal refers specifically to Klal Yisrael.
We want to see how insulting we can get.
Exactly.
It's going to go right.
Yeah.
Deeper and deeper.
Okay. So since he doesn't have tum'ah, based on this pasuk, he can't be in the pasuk of Nazirs at all. So the Gemara says, "Mimai." How do you know? It says, so maybe if a non-Jew goes ahead and is tamei and enters into the Beis Hamikdash, he's not chayiv kares. Okay, but maybe he actually is nitma. Maybe he does have tum'ah. Amakra tizah tahor al hatamei. The tahor shall sprinkle on the tamei by the paraduma. Kol sheyesh lo tahara yesh lo tum'ah. V'chol she'ein lo tahara ein lo tum'ah. So there's a link of the Torah and the tamei person. Only somebody who can become tahor can become tamei. Somebody who can't become tahor can't become tamei. Now, how do we know that a non-Jew can't become tahor? I mean, it's a little begs the question. Like we're going to wind up saying can't become tamei. So how do we already know he can't become tahor? So if you take a look at Tosfos, Tosfos says, Amar Krav Yizato Tamei. So basically, since the ashes of Paraduma emphasizes Bnei Yisrael, we know that non-Jews are completely out. I mean, who knows? Maybe they would have other Tara, B'mitzvah, whatever, but they're completely out of the category of Paraduma. And therefore, since it says Vizah Tahor al Hatamei, it links to our Tamei, and since the Tahara of Paraduma is only by Bnei Yisrael, Tuma is also only by Bnei Yisrael. Okay, so that's how we know that a non-Jew doesn't have Tuma, and therefore he's not in the category of Laviv Limo Lo Yitama. So the Gemara says like this. 1 minute. The Ema Taru Hudu Havila Tuma Havila, which is very funny. It's sort of like who says? Says who? Like, what do you mean? We just said, if he's not, you don't have Tara, you don't have Tuma. They're linked. He's out there all Tamei. So the Gemara says that, well, how do you know? Maybe he doesn't have Tara, but he does have Tuma. So Tosa says the question is that maybe this is like about what? Oh, there you go. So Tosa says the question is that maybe the pasuk is coming for a different drasha. Like we know that this pasuk is used, in another context. Or Tosa says that maybe this pasuk is specifically about the ashes of Paraduma, right? So maybe like that Tuma he doesn't have, that he's excluded from. But maybe he has other Tara, maybe he has Tara b'mikvah. Okay, so this is, how do you know? Maybe this pasuk is for something else. Maybe it's only by Paraduma. How do you know to completely exclude him from the world of Tara and Tuma? So the Gemara says, Amar Krav, Isha she'yitma v'lo yischata. So it says, Isha she'yitma v'lo yischata. Now, what does that teach you? That's also about the ashes of the Paraduma, v'lo yitchata. So Tosfos says, well, maybe it's just, again, the pasuk is extra. Could have just said, Isha she'yitma. Okay, why does that have to say v'lo yitchata? So it's again underscoring the link between Tara and Tuma, and this is seen somehow as being an extra pasuk and saying again, if a non-Jew doesn't have chitui because he's not by the ashes of the paraduma, so therefore he fundamentally is excluded from Tum'ah. Okay. Oh no, wait. I think I misstated the other. Let me state it again. I think I misstated the point. So what was the Gemara's challenge back? Like who says they're linked? So you could read that in one of two ways. One way is this pasuk vizat tahor latamei is not extra. You can't use it for that rasha. So then we quote another pasuk, which is seen as extra. It doesn't have to say v'lo yischata, so it is linked to Harav Tuma. The other way, I think I said it the reverse. The other way is vizat tahor latamei is not talking specifically about paraduma. The only way we know a non-Jew doesn't have Tara is because it says like that paraduma is l'mishmer l'bnei Yisrael.
B'nai Yisrael.
But the vizat tahor latamei is very generic. So the linking of Tara to Tuma, we don't know to exclude the non-Jews from Tara. All we know to exclude non-Jews from is the Tara of paraduma. But vizat tahor, maybe that's a broader category of Tara. Maybe they're not excluded, and that's why the next pasuk is v'isha sheyitma v'lo yischata. The chitui means the sprinkling of the paraduma. So there it's clear that it connects the sprinkling of the paraduma to becoming tamei. And since we do know that non-Jews are not part of paraduma, then we know that they're not part of tumah. So the upshot of this is, right now, that since it says, how do we know categorically exclude non-Jews from Nazirut? Because it says, laviv limo lo yitamah, so it's somebody who fundamentally has tumah, and we know non-Jews cannot become tamei. How do we know that? Because hizat tahor latamei, we know that they don't have tara of paraduma, because it says the mishmer b'nei Israel, and because of a pasuk that links tara to tuma, hizat tahor latamei or isha sheitma v'lo yischata, we learn that since if they don't have tara, they don't have tuma. If they don't have tuma, they can't be in the parsha of Nazir. Yes.
Two questions. One conceptual. The Gemara could have suggested, couldn't it have, that a non-Jew could have a kind of Chatzi Nazirut.
Well, that's what it's getting at, but that is what it's suggesting. It hasn't spelled out what that would look like.
Okay, fine.
But that is what it's asking. It's saying by Erchin, we have a Chatzi. They're Nerach and they're not Marich. Because it has Bnei Israel, but it says Ish. But here too, it says Bnei Israel and it says Ish. So maybe they would have a middle point of Nazirut. It hasn't spelled out what that is, but that's implicitly what's asking. And it says, how do we know that they're completely and categorically, since it says Bnei Israel, it excludes them to some degree. But each maybe includes them.
Right.
No. We have another basis to say they're completely out, and that's about laviv limo lo yitamah, only somebody that has tumah.
And then a small textual question at the end of that Tosafot that you just referenced. He says, "V'lo l'odei kochavim."
Right.
Kafi akuntris. Did he have a Rashi that we don't have?
It seems like, yeah, I know.
Like
he says it.
Telling us.
He refers to Rashi.
This Rashi has that.
Or,
it says a statement.
Well,
yeah, he says that a few times. He refers to Kuntras a few times. I don't know.
Sometimes it's right there.
I don't know if he had a Rashi. Yeah, I don't know.
Parish does refer to the idea without quoting the pasuk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he was referring. I don't know enough about who the author is of this commentary, or that's what we call Pseudo Rashi, and what Tosfos is referring to when he says Kuntras. Yeah, he says
Generally,
it a few
Kuntras
times.
and Tosfot means Rashi.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah. Okay. So that's how we know they don't have Tara of Paraduma, they don't have Tuma, therefore they're not in the parsha of Laviv Limo Lo Yitamah. There's not even a partial Nazirus by them. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Alcha bar Yaakov Amar Shani Hacha. So he's going to give a different answer, how we know non-Jews are categorically excluded from Nazirut. That's by slaves, that you pass down your slaves to your children, you bequeath them to your children after you. Anybody that has inheritance, now non-Jews do inherit. We said before it's Yerushal Esav, but here specifically we mean that can bequeath slaves, that can pass down slaves, is in the parsha of Tumah, meaning is in the parsha of of Nazirut. So we're going back to the pasuk Laviv limo lo yitamah. So we said, a non-Jew isn't in this pasuk. Why? So one explanation is, well, the idea of father doesn't really apply so much to them. And then we rejected that. What do you mean the idea of father does apply? So we said, fine, the idea of lo yitamah doesn't apply to them. Now we're going back to say, no, it is the idea of father. You said that they do have a concept of father for Yerusha and so on, but not all areas of Yerusha. There's something that non-Jews don't bequeath. What is that? Slaves. It's a very disturbing Gemara now about Jews, not about non-Jews. The only people that actually really own slaves to the point that they bequeath them to the next generation is Jews. Non-Jews don't own one another as slaves to the point that they get bequeathed to the next generation.
Wait, are we taking that as a historical statement, or are we taking that as like
No.
our
legal
view of
reality, like whatever they did in society, halacha recognizes the realities of Yerusha, doesn't recognize the realities
so our
of.
halacha just doesn't recognize the Yerusha. It doesn't mean that they don't pass on slaves.
Right. They might do it as exactly as a historical reality, but
We
whether
don't
we sort of
recognize
see,
what they're doing.
recognize it. Again, that's the point. Remember, we don't want to say sociological. It's not sociological. It's whether they have legislation about it. It's what our legal system understands was legally significant about what happened amongst them. So anyway, so it says that we don't recognize legally the bequeathing of slaves of non-Jews. So therefore, when it says la'aviv limo, to some degree, not fully aviv, because there's an area of Yerusha that they don't have, and that makes it not fully the aviv of the pasuk. What Yerusha? They don't pass on slaves. Okay. But me, again, it's not so much about tuma. It sounds like in our girsa, it's trying to prove that they're not that they don't become tamei. But really, Tosfos reads this isn't about tuma. This is going back to the pasuk laviv mo lo yitama, that we know they're not in the parsha of Nizirut because the laviv is not 100%. So let's say that slaves also don't have nizirut because slaves don't own slaves and they don't bequeath them. So Ella Amarava, fine, forget that. We're not going to do that. Gabi Erchin, here's another reason why we don't put slaves, we don't put non-Jews in a middle category by nizirut. Gabi Erchin, Shenember B'nei Yisrael Marichin, Ben of the Chavim Marichin. Maybe the non-Jews are not even in the Nerach category. Talmud Lomar Ish. Hacha b'nei Yisrael. No, so that's what we said over there, that we were able to suggest a middle category. What middle category would we have suggested here? So Hacha b'nei Yisrael knows mivim korban. Vein of the Kochavim knows mivim korban. Here's what we would have said: that b'nei Yisrael means that only b'nei Yisrael are full Nazirim. They become a Nazir and then they bring a korban. But a non-Jew would not become a Nazir and bring a korban. Yachal. Now here would be with the middle status that we're arguing maybe should exist. Yachal aflo yu Nazirim klal. So fine, they don't bring a korban, but maybe their Naziris is a meaningful status. Lamar ish. So that's what you're trying to suggest. Meaning now we're taking a step back. You were trying to suggest, how do we know they're not in some middle category like they are by Erchin? What would the middle category be? The middle category would be that they don't bring a korban, that's excluded from Bnei Israel, but they do have a phenomenon of Nizirut. And you're asking, how do we know not? And so for now, we have basically the answer. Since they're not in the parsha of Tum'ah, we know that they're not at all Nizirim. But that's your middle category. So Rav is going to tell you, I'm going to tell you another reason why we know that's not possible. And here's what he says. Amri, because look, Imishum korban, lav mehacha nafkale. We don't need this pasuk to exclude that they can't bring a korban of Nizirut. We know that from elsewhere. We already know they can't bring a korban of Nizirut. How do you know that? Elamihasa, li'olah. It says by the fact that a non-Jew can actually be noder, can make a neder, and what do you call it? To bring an ola. Where's that pasuk? Vayikra 22:18. Thank you. So here's the pasuk. The pasuk is ish. I'm sorry. Right. No, that's before. That's earlier. Okay. Wait. When was it? 22:18.
I thought so. Ish.
Okay. So interestingly, although it says twice, the bear el kol bnei Israel and ish mi beit Israel, right? Nevertheless, from the ish part, we learn out that it includes non-Jews. And non-Jews can make a neder. They can make a neder and they can bring korbanot. They can vow a korban, not a neder like a konam, this loaf of bread, a lie. Okay, but they can make but here we're talking about specifically a neder of a korban. They can bring korbanot. So we learn from ish. Again, it's the same type of dynamic. It says bnei Israel, but it says ish. Okay, but it says le'olah. They can't bring any korban. Like I said before, we're not going to accept the chatas from a non-Jew. They can bring an olah. Okay, so le'olah prat l'nizirut. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, but they can't bring a korban nizirus. So, okay, so what Rava basically says is, look, he says, here's why I don't need to learn out that they're completely. Your question was, Bnei Israel should exclude them partially, but each should include them partially, right? And that's your question. We tried to find out how they're categorically excluded. He says, You don't need to prove that because we already know they can't bring a korban from this pasuk of Olah, that they can't bring a korban Nizirut. So, and then we come to our parsha of Nizirut. So the only thing left to do is to exclude them completely. They were already partially excluded. They already couldn't bring a korban based on the pasuk of Olah. So since they already couldn't bring a korban of Nizirut, when you get to the parsha where it says Bnei Yisrael by Nazir, what's left to do except to exclude them completely? Yes?
Right. So because they can bring an olah, we therefore know that they can't bring.
Right. The assumption is le'olah. Each le'olah. Only an olah we accept from non-Jews. So once that's true, and presumably also only a free will olah, not the olah of Nizirut, right? So once we know from that parsha that they can't bring a korban Nizirut, when you get to this parsha where it says Bnei Yisrael, you can't say, well, maybe partly included, partly excluded. They're already partly excluded. The only thing left with Bnei Yisrael is to fully exclude them. That's what Rava says. So let's see what the answer is. Let's see why the Gemara says it's still a Havamina. Ema says the Gemara 1 minute. No, I could have said there's another way we could partially include them. Okay, my question is still a good question. Because why don't we say, Bnei Yisrael nozim nizirut olam? They know if the kochavim nozim nizirut olam. Maybe what it means is that will exclude them from a permanent nizirut. But maybe they can still have a normal temporary nizirut. Yacholu you niziri. Maybe they can't be nazir. Tamad lomar ish. Okay, so again, I can have a partial, I can still say something partial. Forget korban. Exclude them from permanent nizirut, but include them in your normal temporary nizirut. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan. No, that's also not a hafamina. Niksiv nazir olam. How would you have read that into the pasuk? Now it's just pretty funny. How do you read korban in the pasuk? But the point is, the psukim do talk about nazirus and about korbanot. There's nothing in the psukim that talk about nazir olam. Okay, so since there's nothing in the psukim that talk about nazir olam, you can't say that that's what the Bnei Yisrael is coming to exclude. What? You're either in or out. Right. So the Gemara says, all right, let's have another havamin of what a half one would have been. So, Ema Bnei Yisrael medirim b'neihem b'nazir ve'enov dikochavim medirim b'neihem b'nazir. Maybe what Bnei Yisrael is doing is to say they can't impose it on their children. Okay, Yocholo yinizim klizim, maybe they shouldn't be a nazir at all. Talmud Lamar ish. So again, maybe here's how I'll partially exclude them. I'll exclude them from the ability to impose it on their children, but I won't exclude them from the ability to they themselves become nazirim. So no. So again, you could have said that's not in the psukim. The psukim don't talk about making your child a nazir. But the Gemara has another answer. 1 minute. This whole idea that you can make your child a nazir is just like the halach l'Moshe Sinai. So it's not in the. It's a way of saying it's not in the psukim at all. It's like it's completely arbitrary. We know it from halach l'Moshe Sinai. You cannot say that that's something the psukim are coming to tell you in or out about. So again, the argument is the way I know that a non-Jew is fully out is because there's no way he would have been partially in. The only way he would have been partially would have been to distinguish between korban, but I already know he's not doing the korban. So since I already know he's not doing the korban, there's no other partial possibility. So the Gemara has another suggestion. 1 minute. Maybe it's about the halacha that whether you can be megaleach, which it says shay, but it means bring a korban for your sort of father's nizirut. You might remember a case where a father and a son accepted nizirut at the same time, or whatever. They would sort of bring a korban for the other one's nizirut. So maybe that's the way they're being partially excluded. But they could. Each would still say they fundamentally could be a nazir. Says no. Rabbi Yochanan halacha ibn Nazir. Again, that's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So there's no way the psukim are doing that split. Okay, so what we're basically up to is the question is maybe the psukim are allowing for partial nizirut. One answer is no because of laviv limo lo yitama, and that fundamentally excludes non-Jews. And the other answer is it's not dealing with a split because there's no split to be made in the psukim. We already know they can't bring a korban, so the only thing left to do is to completely exclude them. Okay, and we'll continue with this tomorrow.